Any days over there? Project going on.
Lots of projects, yeah. And to move everything, a lot of big projects, a lot of complicated projects.
Good.
Yeah. Somebody said a long time ago, we did all the easy stuff,
Yeah,
you know, and now we're getting to the hard stuff.
Okay, we're going back live again this morning, Senate Transportation. We're going to continue our discussion of the Winooski-Burlington Main Street Bridge project. Big project. We have Bob White with us here this morning from Agency of Transportation. Go right ahead, take it on.
Great. Good morning again. For the record, I'm Robert White. I'm the Project Delivery Bureau Director at the Agency of Transportation, and I'm here today to give you an update on the Winooski River Bridge and the raised grant that we received. And I thought it would be, actually, let me go to the first slide here.
Just for the record, nobody from Winooski or Burlington responded to our invitation.
Is that the main bridge, the main one right there that you just go up the hill to UVM? It's right there. Okay.
Yes.
Right here's 27.
And actually, if I could advance my slide.
I know what
There
you're
we
saying.
go.
As it cut the ribbon on it.
I didn't say it.
Okay.
So yeah, here we are. You can see actually on the right-hand side, you can see exit 15 of I-89. And as you travel north, it's just off the screen there is exit 16 where the diverging diamond is that we've been talking about a lot. Then you come down the hill into Winooski. You come into their circulator, as it's called, go straight. And that's the bridge that crosses the Winooski River. There's a large mill, old mill building right there. The bridge is actually on a town highway. And as you can see, that little dash line right in the middle of the river is the border between Winooski and Burlington. So Winooski owns half of the bridge and Burlington owns the other half.
A lot of traffic now.
Yes, and we'll talk about that some more. I thought it would be interesting, and you know, you had quite a testimony earlier before me, but this is going to be great because I thought I'd start off with a little history and sort of lead into the Winooski Bridge, but also some history that really talks about our transportation system, and much like the Winooski Bridge, has had quite a past. So I want to start off first in 1927. And actually, mentions the flood of 1927 on November 4th, but I want to start actually just prior to that in October and talk a little bit about this storm because it was a historic storm here in Vermont. October had some higher than average rainfalls throughout the month. No foliage, you know, we're into the fall, there's not a lot of vegetation, so the ground got saturated really quickly. And then in early November, there was actually two storms. One came from the west, actually picked up a lot of moisture from the Great Lakes. And then the other was actually a hurricane that was to the south that came up the coast. And they both came together at the same time right over Vermont and stalled out there for a few days. That storm created the flood of 27, one of the greatest catastrophes here in Vermont. That storm dropped over 8 inches of rain in some places. Some towns actually recorded rainfall over 4 inches an hour at some points during the storm. That's the storm, quite an event.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk about it years ago, how it affected, because that's a big flow of water comes through there.
Yes.
Did it tear out the other old bridge? Did it tear out?
It did. We're going to get to that.
Okay.
Yep, definitely. So here's some history photos I want to share with you. Here's Montpelier. Here's the corner of State and Main. That building right on the corner is the Gems sales building.
That's the first floor on the water?
That is the first.
They have the high water mark there.
Yeah, a lot of stores have.
Yes, it was upwards of 10 feet in Montpelier.
Must have lost their key.
Here's Richford Main Street. You guys may recognize it in the lower right-hand corner. That historic bridge, that's looking down Main Street. And I think that's at the intersection of what might be River Street and Main Street. But there's, again, a situation where their bridge is missing. Here's Richmond. This is Bridge Street. The village of Richmond is at the bottom of the screen. You're traveling down Bridge Street. And if you look sort of, and I don't know if you can see my, yeah, I guess you can. Right here is the round church, for those of you that know.
Yeah.
And here you can.
No, there's a round church, yeah, right there, you cross the bridge, you go just sharp corner, it's right there, sits on the left.
Yeah, so that is the round bridge, and you can see actually the bridge laying in the truss bridge laying in the river right there.
Wow.
Missing from its abundance in this location.
Imagine that, wow.
So just a few facts about the storm. 84 Vermonters lost their life. One notable was the lieutenant governor at the time, lost his life in the storm. I believe it was, well, I wanted to say Franklin, but I'm not sure of the last name now.
Wow.
We lost 1,285 bridges in the storm that we lost and more damaged.
That's interesting. I never knew much about that.
Hundreds of miles of roadway, hundreds of miles of railroad tracks, which was very important back then. Some would even argue that this storm actually is the birth of the Agency of Transportation, because prior to this, the agency had literally 3 people in their bridge division.
Wow.
And at this time, the state didn't own any roads. They didn't control any roads. All the roads and bridges were controlled by the towns, right? Because it was the Legislative Act of 1931 that transferred all that town land to the Agency of Transportation, right? So there's that. The interesting part here is that bridge crew at the, I forgot what it was called, actually the Highway Division or something at the time. 3 people became 35 people pretty quickly. And by the end of 1930, we had rebuilt 1,600 bridges.
Really?
From
3
27
years?
Oh, from the flood.
in 3 years, yes. We built over 1,600 bridges. Notable ones is the Checker House Bridge. That was the longest spanning bridge that we rebuilt. And to sort of segue into our discussion, also the Winooski Bridge. So here are some of the pictures. Here's the plaque.
That must have been all federal money back then. It had to be.
That was actually the first time Vermont went to the federal government to get federal funding for disaster relief.
Oh, wow, because that's a lot of money back
So it was more central in Vermont, New Hampshire probably had some residual flooding, but it was really Vermont that got hammered.
Yeah, I would say 90% of it was Vermont.
It's just the ground was frozen.
Partially frozen and saturated, yeah.
From October.
Yeah. So there you can see at the lower picture is right during the flood event. You can actually see some of the water coming out of the windows of the mill building there. And any of you that know this, this was a very difficult spot, right? Because the Winooski River takes a hard turn right there to come over the dam and then back down the river.
Just before the bridge, where the Willow Mill was, my dad spent 29 years working at a bakery. He started at 13 years old, and that's where he lived in Colchester, but he worked at that bakery for 30 years.
Is that Cross?
Star Bakery.
Star?
Their bakery, yeah.
And then this upper picture, you can see this is sort of the waters have settled down quite a bit, but you can see where the bridge would have been right in this location. And it's not there. If you look closely, it actually appears that there is some sort of a temporary bridge right here. It might be big enough for vehicles. It's hard to tell. It's pretty narrow, but and my understanding from reading some of the articles of the time is that this mill had somewhere here a building that was constricting even more water. They dynamited it, destroyed it, and within 20 minutes the water level went down 2 feet in the river. So a big constricting point right here.
The Waterworks Restaurant Center, that's a big restaurant.
Generally, the Winooski River transmits like 1,800 cubic feet of water at any time. During this flood event, 140,000 cubic feet of water went through here.
When did the hydro facility get built, you know? Winooski one there?
I'm not sure.
Wow.
And this is sort of the story for our entire state, but it's the story for this bridge too.
Rebuilding that 27, the technology it took to, I mean, they didn't have the equipment they have today. It just,
But they replaced a bridge, so the the prior bridge was built when?
Good question. I don't know. I'm pretty sure it was a truss. It was a metal truss bridge. But as you can see, the flood of 27 and this bridge was put in place. Actually, the construction was completed in 29, but I think it was open to traffic in 28.
wow.
So in 1 year, they rebuilt this bridge.
And it lasted since then. Imagine that.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a little more about the current bridge. So we're going to leave the flood of 27 for now and move forward to today. And so here's the existing bridge. It's a 3-span steel girder bridge. It's fairly narrow, 57 feet curb to curb. It's got decorative concrete railings. It's got a reinforced concrete deck.
Is that how big it was in 28, or they like added the pedestrian?
I think there was a few feet on either side where we added the pedestrian on at some point.
With the concrete, how the hell they mixed the concrete back then? I mean, you didn't have any power companies there, the cement companies.
Yeah, and the interesting thing here is that currently this bridge is actually in really good shape, especially the substructure. Those piers, those abutments, they're on bedrock. They're in really good shape. There are a few condition issues with the deck and the joints, but quite frankly, this bridge is in great condition, right?
It's hard to believe.
But we are getting close to its 100-year anniversary, right? So the biggest problem with this bridge is it's obsolete, right? If you look at those widths, very narrow lanes, we have an added on narrow bike and ped facility there. This bridge actually puts across over 31,000 vehicles a day. It is the third highest used non-interstate bridge in our state.
I'm amazed they built it that wide back then, seriously, because you didn't have the traffic. To build it that wide to last 100 years, it just blows my mind. The thought that went into that by somebody. To build it, you'd think it would be a 2-lane bridge, that's all, but to build 4 lanes.
Yeah, and honestly, when you look at it, I mean, it is a very modern looking bridge.
No,
I mean,
it
we have
is.
steel truss bridges out there that are newer than this. I mean, this was sort of ahead of its time in many ways.
That's what I'm saying. I'd love to read a book about it. There must be something out there. Wow.
Sounds like somebody I know could write it.
Yeah, there you go. There you go, Russ. All yours.
And when you build a bridge today, what's the lifespan?
We are looking at 100-year lifespan. The difficulty that we've had with our infrastructure is this storm, right? We have 2 major events that happened in this state. We have the flood of 27, which replaced, like I said, 1,600 bridges all at once. So now we have 1,600 bridges that are going to come to term fairly close together, although we've been trying to catch up with that. And the other thing is the interstate. The late 60s, early 70s, we built the interstate. We put all these culverts in, the culvert in Richmond that started to fail. Those things are all coming of age. So we have 2 major infrastructure build outs during those times.
What's a proper width now? That's 57 feet. What's a proper?
Great segue. So
61.
let's move into, this is sort of what we are proposing. And obviously we're very early on, but this is sort of a concept of what we see. That's a rendition up at the top there, but you're looking at 78 feet
Wow.
as opposed to 56.
A triangular section over to the right, is that something that exists now or would be part of the design?
So that is that intersection there of
Is that the
where,
Burlington side to the
That-
right?
that is, yep.
Okay, so that's the one that goes
Up
down
toward
around there.
Trinity.
Yes. And so we are very concerned with that intersection because it is a difficult
Yeah.
intersection. And I'll get a little more into the funding details, which constrains how much we can do, but we are gonna be looking at that intersection at the same time. And we are hopeful that it can go the same time that the bridge does, but we don't wanna hold up the bridge project. And again, I'll get into the details because the grant we got has some very constrained timeframes. But here we go, that, there's, not only do you have some wider lanes, but you have what's shown here, you have a little bit of 2-foot shoulder width outside the outside lanes. You have a protective barrier between the bike and pedestrian facilities, where now I think it's just a curb.
So there's one on each side?
Yep,
And I'm sure you're gonna get there. There'll be a temporary bridge to get across there.
good question. We'll get there. We don't know. We're very early
I'm
on.
looking to see where you put one and it's
Yeah,
just like,
it's not
where the
easy.
hell are you gonna put a bridge?
Not only that, but if you move off the existing footprint, then you get into Act 250 usually.
Yeah, what we believe is going to happen here is that we're gonna have to build the bridge, actually, in this picture, just north, or actually it's east, but just above there, you can see there's a little bit of a green space. Let me see if I can link it right here. And then there's a parking area over here. So we believe we're gonna have to build a new bridge over here off to the side. And then when it's done, demo the old bridge, slide the new bridge in. Because
Sounds
again,
familiar with the drawbridge.
Well, that's what you did in Hartford on the interstate, you slid in a bridge.
yeah, and again, 31,000 vehicles a day going across this, and where's the detour, right? You gotta go back to 89 to
Oh,
go
yeah.
south,
Oh, no.
or you gotta go up to 89 and go north. There's no good way to get across here. Nowhere close.
And
So,
you can't build like half of it at a time,
it would be very difficult, probably.
like half of it. and then
Oh,
half of it.
We are gonna have to find a way to impact traffic the least as possible.
You know side roads through there you can take?
Not to cross,
Anywhere else.
not
The
to,
interstate's above and there's nothing below.
not to cross the river. That's the problem. There's no major crossings of the river.
The interstate, that's up above, you can do the interstate, but then you gotta go way.
The bike ferry. Just put cars on there.
So again, quite a bit larger than the existing bridge. And you can actually see from this rendition that it almost doesn't fit well with the intersection on both sides, because it is so wide. There will have to be some improvements to those roadways on either side as well.
Do you think the pilings will be all taken out too? They won't use anything, you'll start from scratch, probably.
I would guess they're gonna start from scratch,
Yeah,
because I would guess that they might even try to reduce one of those piers to only go to one instead of two. It is such a,
That water comes down there pretty fast,
it's such a constricted part of the river.
at least the drawbridge.
But also,
the water's-
Ice buildup as well. with
Is
the-
that active hydro still? Is it legal?
There is, the Winooski one is very active. That's where BED gets a big chunk of their power.
You watch the water come down there every day, and then it comes down there, boy, it doesn't.
So here's a couple other renditions that show you can actually feel how much wider it is, even in these photos. Because if you go across that bridge, you know that it's a pretty narrow.
It's only
bridge
2 lanes now.
No, it is 4 lanes.
It is 4 lanes.
Yeah.
I've been across it one.
Yeah, if I go back to this, there it's 4 10-foot-6 travel
No, I was
lanes.
amazed, like I said, back then they thought of that, I can't even imagine, 100 years ago, they were thinking about putting 4 lanes in, wow.
Yeah, because if you think of the cars in 1927,
Yeah, it's the guys there,
they were tiny.
I
James still go,
I do. I have a 23 and a 31.
plus one driver.
Nice. Model A, Model T.
A Model T.
Yes.
The earlier one.
Yeah.
With the wooden spokes.
Love them.
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth,
So here's the raise
They'll
grant.
take her over the bridge before they take it down.
Yeah,
maybe.
have your picture on there.
So the raise grant, and that stands for Rebuilding America Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity. Okay, this has been a grant stream that's been in place for a few years. This round of the raise grant, they gave 166 projects awarded nationwide. The pot of money was actually split into 2 pieces. There was the pot that was for projects less than 25 million and greater than 25 million. And we are right on that sort of borderline, but the greater than $25 million pot was very small, and it was only going to give out a few projects that we weren't sure we were going to get the grant. So we looked at the numbers. We've got a proposed estimate of 31 million for the project. When you distill that down.
They're gonna build a new bridge for 31 million.
We're spending 14 million on the pedestrian bridge.
Seriously, I do,
Almost half the
with the
cost.
replacement and everything else, 31 million.
That is the estimate, and I will, and you know this as well as I do, I guarantee it's gonna go up before we get there. But I tell you, the one thing we got going for us is that we are gonna have to deliver this project quickly. So we're not gonna have a project sit around and on the books for quite some
Are
time.
you using the same abundance?
We don't know yet.
31 million.
Maybe that's why the savings is, they're assuming that.
So the federal share of that 31 million would be 24.8. So that got us down into the smaller pot of money. We most likely will need to find additional funding sources for this by the time we
I
get
thought
there.
you were talking $75 million or
How
something.
much did your drawbridge cost?
I said a 75, 80, I guess.
I wouldn't think this would be
I
like
mean,
this.
it's not the drawbridge. I'm
Yeah,
just going down, but even that's a major thing, because you gotta put up, you put a substitute temporary bridge. I know, but that was 25 million up in the drawbridge. So, temporary, I mean, it won't be,
Yeah.
is that elaborate, but that's a big, because it doesn't go up in the air, but.
And that is one of the deciding factors on the estimate is the plan is to not have a temporary bridge. The
Oh.
plan is to try to,
Oh, okay.
build off alignment,
I see.
potentially demolish and move the new bridge in. And
Okay, that would make.
So I had like 1 day closure.
yeah, I mean,
Oh, yeah, that would- yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've said 1 day
Yeah,
before,
yeah.
but it's like this big a bridge, it's probably more like a week.
Yeah, I
But
realize
even for
it's
this
bad,
big of
yeah,
a bridge, a week is probably pretty
Oh, I
fast.
see,
And-
okay.
And I can imagine while you're there, Rob, that the Burlington side of that is just a mess of road right there. So you just gotta try to figure out why you're there and think in 100 years of how you can make that better. Because here's your opportunity to do that.
That's it.
You know, you're not gonna get that chance again.
Right, and, the traffic hasn't been impacted and as you can see at the bottom there, the plan is to have a bridge open to traffic before September 30th of 2031, because that's when this money has to be spent, okay? So we're gonna go past its 100-year lifespan. So in 100 years, the traffic hasn't been impacted, and we're gonna have to impact it at least at some point in time.
Rush, you could be there because of it.
So there's the funding split. It's an 80-10-5-5, right? It's 80% federal, 10% state, and then the two cities, Winooski and Burlington, share 5%, share 10%, 5% each for the costs. We have to fully obligate all these raised grants funds by September 30th, 2026.
It's one of several raised grants.
It is actually Vermont got 3 raised grants awarded to us.
The
And
bridge was a raised grant, right? Oh, From South Burlington, didn't it? They got a raise? They got a
They
grant.
did get a grant, the one we heard about yesterday.
Was that a raise?
You know, you think about the federal government, the 31 trillion in the hole right now. Where the hell is?
actually, here you go. Here's the raised grant for this bridge, and the second page is actually shows the 3 Vermont projects. Like you wanna. So they,
Presentation. ICAS for
Yeah.
the website.
yeah, I had this thinking that question might come up about the other projects. And so there's the Winooski River Bridge, there's a transit-oriented development plan for the northwest area of Vermont. And then there's the Federal Street Multimodal Connector.
That's so is there another name for that? That's Federal Street in Burlington?
Yeah.
Yeah, is there another name for it?
Is there another
That's
name
the
for it?
connector or whatever they call it.
I'm not sure.
Federal Street.
Doesn't know.
One interesting thing I'll point out, and it came up a little bit about our discussion with House on the Vermont State Standards update, is if you look on that Winooski River Bridge replacement, I talked about how it's got the 3rd highest traffic volume for a non-interstate bridge. but it's still on the federal level, it's categorized as rural.
Yeah,
What's number one?
Actually, the top three bridges are right there, two of them in Burlington on that same Route 2-7 corridor, and there's one in South Burlington, which,
non-interstate bridges.
right,
But I was wondering, so they're all right there?
Yep.
Yeah, just,
so I thought it was fitting.
where is the bridge across the Winooski that goes up to the islands, Route 2? Is that in Colchester? Is that Milton on Route 2? Not the interstate,
That is Milton.
Milton?
Yeah.
It's kind of goes down into a, you know, a valley and.
It used to be, the old road, now it's level there. Conway, the island you talked about, when you get off of Chicken Corners, you go that, yeah, that was done a few years ago.
There used to be a truss bridge, that's replaced,
Yeah, it's a nice, I don't know how many years ago, I've been here a long time.
but that's Milton then, not Colchester.
Yeah, it's Milton line.
Yeah.
Milton and Colchester worked together because they had a big argument about reducing the speed from 55 to 50. Oh my God, they had a big issue over that, and they got it reduced to 50. That didn't make any difference, people still traveling 55 or 60.
I'm going to commend the people that go after these grants. We seem to do very well in the state as far as capturing grants. And I can't imagine that every state's as successful as what we are. And 640,000 people, and we just seem to get our fair share when it comes to that.
Yeah, our congressional delegates did us very well, even for this one. It's a large grant, it's a large bridge. And if you think about it, this is a town highway bridge, right? This would totally consume our town highway bridge program funds. I mean, totally consume it. So we knew this was going to be the #1 town highway bridge on the BPSB2 process that we have. And we knew that. And so we went after this raise grant because we knew there was a lot of money there. We got our congressional delegates to help us write letters of support, and we have done very well.
That's a good point, Rob. So what would normally have happened? Where would that fund have come? If we didn't have this grant money, who would have paid for this bridge?
They would have to apply for this.
It would have been the town would have been responsible for all that money, and the state would have had a little stakehold in it.
Makes what we have for town highway structure is kind of puny.
Yeah, we just had taken all the money one year, nobody would have gotten their bridges.
Yeah, a lot like when you talk about the drawbridge or some of those other large projects, right? They just decimate those programs. This would have been the same. The only other thing we could have done is, look for some special funding opportunities, whether it was other grants or even private funds potentially, maybe done a public-private partnership. I mean, this is a huge undertaking for Vermont. And, I mentioned it, there's other bridges out here just like this one, waiting for their time too. So,
Across the town.
and the only other way would, for us to take our budgets and, draw down some of the other programs and move money over to get bridges like this done.
How did they go out, I'm sure that, I guess I've heard this before, they go out, inspect it to see which one has the shortest lifespan?
Yeah.
Be able to put it to the front, because they check all the time.
Yes.
Chances are, if you didn't have this grant, there have been other bridges that would have probably got done before this one.
Potentially.
You said it was still in pretty remarkable shape.
Yeah, actually, we've been talking about this bridge with the Regional Planning Commission for years. And I can remember back when I was the right-of-way chief, I want to say it was 10 or 15 years ago, they came to us with a scoping study and said, we want the agency to do this bridge. And at the time, we basically said, look, the bridge is fine. We just inspected it. It's actually in fabulous shape. And we've done a little bit of rehab over the years on it, but it was fabulous. So we said, go back and scope it some more and get it closer to conceptual plans, and we'll talk about it again. And they did. They came back to us and we said, okay, we've got it on our radar. And then, like I mentioned, as we were running the VPSB2 process to find out what projects are rising to the top, this bridge came out #1 for that area. I mean, it was at its time.
Again, I'll state that we're a little disappointed that both directors of Public Works, the City of Burlington, and the City of Winooski never responded to our hearing today. I just thought that's not. would think they'd have more interest in at least appearing before us, talking about it.
Yeah, I will say they have been great partners. They've been in this with us, you know, right from the start of getting together the grant and the information and writing letters of support. And they are in the meetings with us every time we meet about this.
Well, that's good to know.
We are right in the process of selecting a design consultant. This will most likely be a design build project, because the one thing design build allows us to do is to obligate both design and construction funds before we're actually going to construction. So we can meet this September 30th of 2026 date of obligating the funds. But this will be our next big project, you know, whether it's the Middlebury Rail.
Put that together in a month.
What's that?
They built this bridge
The year.
in a year.
In a year.
In a year.
I think it was open to traffic in just a year, because the flood of 27 was in November. By the end of 28, I believe it was open to traffic, and that's what the plaque says. And then I think the formal completion was just in the spring of
There's something
29.
way back then, with the labor, all hand work you had to do.
Well, look at what the Romans did. Of course, they invented cement, so.
It's just
Oh,
amazing.
it's
It
just
blows my mind that far back, because today they got equipment, the cranes and everything else they got. Just like they built churches back then, you know, 100 feet in the air, they did it all by hand and ladders, and, you know, look at the
Yeah,
churches,
all
they're
that,
beautiful.
all that concrete, all
Yeah.
those piers were probably all mixed by hand right there on
You know,
site.
it's just amazing, it's.
Even the
wow.
1600 bridges in 3 years. I mean, that just,
I know.
even you take 1600 small bridges is a huge feat, but they did some
I know,
large
I know,
bridges.
like
Plus all
today.
the roads are.
They must have had a standard design.
Well, they did, and that's exactly how they did it. They actually, we teamed up with a large bridge company. They actually lent us some of their staff, the state, and they did all these standard designs. So there was a design for a 50-foot bridge, a design for a 100-foot, there was a design for a 200-foot.
That's what we need to do with school.
School strikes.
Today,
Other states have done.
in 2 weeks, Ireland's gone into the diversion diamond. It built both sides, walkways and everything in 2 weeks. I mean, that's good equipment they got today. You know, everything is blasting and everything else, all automatic, and they just do it.
What is the town highway bridge total budget? I should know this, but I don't remember.
Oh, it's right here, but I don't have my glasses on, so I can't tell you.
I can't even tell you what it is off the top of my head, what the total is this year, but
It would be here. Okay, this sheet right here.
Okay, anything else? Good coverage, thank you.
The highway bridge.
Why don't you give us some history about the flood? I really.
Yeah, I enjoyed that.
I'd like to, is there anything out there that we could read about, you know, in your research? Is there?
there's all kinds of stuff out there, and actually I'll send it to you. And the only reason I am very familiar with this is that I'm from New Hampshire. I worked for New Hampshire DOT, then I came over here to work for the Agency of Transportation. And when I went back to get my bachelor's degree, I had to do a paper on history. And I said, you know what? I want to know the history of Vermont's roads because I'm from New Hampshire. And so I dug in and I dug into the flood of 27, which was the
That's
critical
interesting.
piece.
I wish I'd have learned more from my father, but I didn't back then.
You know, there's still markers, and there's one in water, there's.
Yeah, a lot
here.
of talk about that, yeah.
Talk about
He
the
had pictures of
They're showing the original month.
Yeah.
In that picture, there is a marker down there on one of the buildings, I think by the gem building. Yeah, I'll go back to the beginning.
Right
So
there.
here's State and Maine.
There it is.
There it is.
I believe there's a brick on that building right there that says water level
There used to be a bank right there. I
1927.
don't know if the bank is still there, but when we were
Across the
kids,
street.
I think they're.
well, when I was living up there, 72 to 76, it was right there.
I think they're.
Where the jewel
Yeah,
beads.
yeah, right down that corner, it was a bank. And then you go in there and up top, they had the marker.
So- And what I find fascinating is the river goes under those bridges on that side of the,
Yeah, it just.
Yes,
because,
What?
huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you see it on the,
It goes under the buildings.
yeah, you see it on one side,
Yeah.
but on the other side, it's under the buildings.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there another bridge, you guys? Winooski, here's the bridge you're proposing. Is there another bridge
Yeah, here.
further
So the interstate,
This is the,
It's the interstate.
Yeah.
interstate bridge.
so there's these waterfall rocks. here,
Yeah, so there's none other bridge that services anybody that way?
But that's the one that's all the way over here in like.
No, okay, that's a railroad
This-
right here. Oh,
One
okay.
twenty, you have to take
Oh,
one
way over there.
twenty-seven
Yeah.
and across this over here.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank
You
you,
did a
Rob.
good job. Appreciate it. Thank you.
So it's either
Okay,
going to the interstate
why
or
don't we-
all the way over here.
That's a
Stay
long
alive,
way.
but then the other folks will need to go.
Yeah, here.
Yeah, there it is. Where the hell is that? Where's that going? A long ways away. Oh, right there, okay.
Just doesn't, it's all windy stuff. So there's this bridge and then there's the.
Good morning.
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 How are you?
We've been talking about bridges, now we're gonna talk about trains. There we go.
That works.
Yeah, so they have to like,
I'll be
yeah,
in.
Burlington would have to go all the way out there to get around to Winooski or go to the interstate.
Hey, Rob, can you email me this, please?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Join us down there. Sit right over there. All right.
We'll put you in the hot seat.
Yeah,
There you go.
it's set up here.
That must have been the wrong.
We have paper copies.
Senator Kitchen, I don't know if we've met before. I know it personally, but nice to meet you in person. Yes.
Well, we have that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's been
You're
another-
here
So you're in South Burlington.
I said you look just like your father.
Paper?
Yeah, right.
How's he doing?
Good, good. They're keeping busy.
We'll take them back if you don't want.
Yeah.
Where's Bruce?
Arizona, still outside of Phoenix.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's been out there for quite some time.
You already have it? Okay. Yeah, we'll take them back if anyone doesn't want them.
Moved around the country quite a bit and then settled.
We did.
Well,
He's in Phoenix.
we're back this morning with Vermont Rail. We'll have an interesting discussion to have about our railroad system. Thanks to Vermont Rail, we have Amtrak to Burlington, which we had yesterday, and Vermont Rail came aboard many years ago and doing a good job and serving Vermont well. We're really pleased to have them in our
This looks like a real nail biter. Rail flaw and geometry inspection.
Cable
way down the line.
plug this in, share the screen up here. Or
Just
go to State House.
I get, first I don't have my glasses, so I can't see anything. Oh, I've got them just, I can see on the screen.
Who's pair that? That's just-
I think they must be Tom.
Oh,
Yeah.
they left.
One point you had like kind of, it was just like, moving around. These are ones that Tom gave me.
Oh, they're
Oh,
readers,
yeah.
yeah. I've got them all over the house.
You need a joint soup for. That's the link I believe I received this morning.
So would you like to introduce your guest today or?
Certainly. Thank you for having me, us, Mr. Chairman. I'm Allison Crowley, lobbyist for the Railroad Association of Vermont, Vermont Rail Systems.
Oh, I wondered who the lobby
Okay. So did we. And with us today is Selden Houghton at the head of the table. He's the president of Vermont Rail System. And we have Peter Young, who is general counsel for Vermont Rail System, and Mary Ann Michaels, who is CFO of Vermont Rail System. And they've all been in this.
Dave Wilson is probably, where is he? Florida?
Snow
Down
machine,
south,
Florida.
yes.
Summer machining? Yeah, he
No,
lives
he's
on
in
that.
Florida?
Yeah, right now he's in Florida.
Oh, like in Florida.
Yes, or else he would have been.
He, he has a boat across my store, so I see him quite often in the summer. Yeah,
Is his daughter involved in the?
Yes,
As
Nicole. Yep, she is a manager for the passenger department. So she takes care of, like the dinner train that we have, or we have done it, we used to do some of the Father's Day brunches.
yeah.
She does all that?
Yeah. So she does that.
Are you having that again this year? Those?
Yeah, we're doing the dinner train. So we will have the dinner train on Saturdays in July and August. And then in September, we'll do it Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Wow.
Where does it go?
It leaves Burlington and it goes to Middlebury and back.
ish. So it's really fun and
That
it's,
Father's Day was
food
great.
is
That was,
awesome.
yeah, the
Really
food.
do a good job. So, and it's, you know, of course, it's right on the waterfront, so it's beautiful for the views.
Yeah, we only made it to
the sunset.
Virginia's, but it was pretty.
The time of Father's Day, I think we came back, we also had a tour, on Lake Champlain Ferry, I think it was.
Oh, yes, you did the
They both,
yes,
they had both in one
the
package.
package deal, and then you went out.
Families were all together,
Yeah.
God, we had great, it was wonderful to be all together.
So
That's right.
what's nice about that is people can't leave.
That's right, that's what I say, we were
Right?
together, and you're together for 2 hours.
Terrible if you have a family fight.
Yeah.
Something not working.
Just, I think we're ready.
Okay.
Should be good. Okay. I think we're good.
And you don't like playing with that.
Nope, whether you lose,